Hi everyone, this is the first video of my four-part series responding to Greg Koukl's take on the solidness of the Christian worldview. Greg Koukl was interviewed by Jim Daly, the president and CEO of Focus on the Family. The interview was about Greg's new book called The Story of Reality. In this video, I begin my response to Greg's interview while playing Super Metroid. Links to the original material can be found in the video description, so you can check to make sure I'm not pulling any shenanigans in my editing or presentation of the source material. Please enjoy the analytical gaming. Let's see. Yep, I have my controls set up just right. Great. We're going to go ahead and get to Ridley here, and then want to kick off our first Greg Koukl clip. All right.
Phrase we often use in the Christian community is to have a Christian worldview, and that's not to intimidate. It's not complicated, actually. It's just a way of looking at things the way God would look at things. What's the lens that he sees it all through?
It would be nice if we could confirm that a God even exists before we try to see things the way that he does. I mean, wouldn't you think so, Jim? Obviously, Jim and Greg here are convinced that the Christian God exists, or else they wouldn't be talking this way. But for me, being someone who is unconvinced of the Christian God, or any God really, I would want to see that an actual God exists before we can figure out, well, what does he want? How does he think? Let's see if they can go on to make us convinced. Maybe he'll convince me. You never know. Today could be the day that I get convinced of the Christian God existing. So let's see what else they have to say here.
I like the mic drop title of your book, The Story of Reality.
Yeah.
That kind of says it all right there, right?
Yeah.
Because we're always in this constant battle with the world about what their story is. And they think it's offensive to say, well, actually, we've got the real story.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the contrast between worldviews.
No. Having the true story is not the contrast between the worldviews that he's saying it is, at least not for me. First of all, why is The Story of Reality a mic drop title? That doesn't even make sense to me, and it's not offensive that you think your story is the real story. That part itself is not offensive. It's offensive how you want to force others to comply to the demands of your story. And this is a problem recently in the past few decades where Christianity is trying to, or at least a lot of Christian groups are trying to gain more and more control over political processes and get more into politics and take control more over government, which has always been a problem with religion and government mixing, right? It always ends in bloodshed and awful, awful persecution of many people. Not to go off on a rant here, but right now, if a lot of Christians got their way and they got a theocracy and they got government to taking over in the name of Christianity or whatever, most people still wouldn't be happy, because what version of Christianity wins out? Is it Catholicism? Are we all required to be Catholics now and behave like Catholics? Is it Protestantism, where we're all made to be like Protestants? I'm telling you now, the Catholics would win this because they are the most dominant and numerous faction of Christianity, if you will. Imagine for a moment that there was a Jewish government that took over, as far as a Jewish president, and let's say it's a Jewish majority in Congress. And they were like hardcore, like don't eat pork, keep the Sabbath, Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, and all that. And let's say they re-implemented Levitical law. Would you want to be someone that's forced to not eat bacon anymore or pepperoni pizza just because you have a government that says, hey, we don't think that's right, so therefore you shouldn't be doing this? Most people would lose their minds if they didn't share that religious belief. It's the same respect that we're asking for in general as people defending against a Christian theocracy. We don't believe everything that they believe, so it wouldn't be right to legislate that. Hold on. Let me go ahead and take care of Chorizo here. He's kind of bugging me. I need some good drops, but he's not going to give them to me. Oh well. At least I have all my missiles. Oops. Come on. I could do this. Come on now. There we go. Yeah, Jim is portraying the world as one homogeneous entity or organization. There are thousands of worldviews out there, and implying that there's a dichotomy between your specific version of Christianity and everyone else is simplifying your message to the point of error. I have to farm for some missiles here. Give me some missiles, baby. Give me some missiles. Give me some missiles. There we go. There we go. That's what I needed. All right. All right. Let's see what else. Let's see what else Jim has to say with Greg Koukl here.
Look, when it comes to understanding the nature of reality, everybody's got their point of view, and everybody thinks their point of view is accurate. But it turns out it's only the Christian, it seems, for being faulted for thinking that their point of view is accurate.
Yeah.
No. No. We are not faulting you for thinking that your worldview is accurate. That's not at all what the case is. Now, a lot of people do think their worldview is accurate, but I completely disagree that everybody thinks their worldview is accurate. That's just not the case. For example, my worldview, I could be wrong about anything. I'm not saying it is accurate. I'm committed to trying to make sure it's not inaccurate, and I'm trying to get to the most accurate model of reality that I'm always thinking about as possible. But that doesn't mean I think everything I think is accurate. That's just not the case. Life is a little bit more of a gradient than that. It's not just a black and white thing. At least for people that are more nuanced in their thinking or more scientifically minded. So Greg is continuing with this false idea that people who don't subscribe to his beliefs are offended by him having those beliefs. You can have all the weird beliefs you want, but the moment you start pushing those beliefs onto others who don't share them is the moment I get offended. What Greg is doing here is he's using a version of the straw man fallacy. For those who are not familiar, a fallacy, it's an error in your logic that allows you to get to bad conclusions. For example, if my dog came into the house and he was completely soaked, and I say the dog is wet, therefore it's raining outside. Well, that's not really a good conclusion, is it? The dog could have ran through a water sprinkler. It could have ran through a pool. I mean, there's so many other things that could happen. That saying it's just because it's raining outside is a fallacy, because you're using a bad reason to get to a conclusion. Doesn't mean you're wrong. It might very well be raining outside. You might be right. It's just saying that's not a good reason to conclude it's raining outside, okay? So with that out of the way, Greg is using what you call a straw man fallacy. This is where you construct a version of an argument you're against, but you construct it in such a way that makes it easier to knock down. Therefore, a straw man. It's like a scarecrow, being knocked over. When Greg says that everybody is upset because of him, thinking he's right or thinking he has the accurate worldview, it is inaccurate. That is not what we're upset about. We're upset about people forcing their beliefs on others, pure and simple. Now, if he had said that, if he had said, hey, people are mad about us forcing our view and legislating our view on others, he would be accurate at that point. That would be called steel manning. In other words, he's constructing the argument in such a way that I would agree with it, or that the people he's arguing against would agree with it. So anytime somebody's misrepresenting an idea or whatever, be very wary of that person and what their logic is, because it sounds like they may be using logical, fallacious reasoning. Okay, we're here to Kraid, so I'm going to focus for a minute. I'm going to try to get the quick kill in, but I'm not sure I'm going to make it. We'll see. But I have more to say about this fallacious reasoning in a minute. I almost got the quick kill. I missed one shot, but that's okay. Basically, it's going to be a much easier fight now. There you go. He's a goner. Excellent. Now we got the Varia suit. Another point to make here is that if we all thought that our worldviews were accurate, like everybody just thought that, we wouldn't learn anything. I mean, science, the way we know it now, wouldn't even be a thing. We have only gotten to the state of scientific progress that we are at in human history right now because people say, maybe I'm wrong. You know, maybe it's not a God smiting the church when lightning hits it. And it's because the God is, mad that somebody's not following the rules or displeased him in some way. This comment that Greg makes about thinking everyone thinks their point of view is accurate, it sounds a lot like projection to me. In case people aren't familiar with what projection is where you project your views or feelings onto others as if maybe they feel the same way when they may not. A common example that's used, let's say that a husband is constantly accusing his wife of cheating on him or wanting to cheat on him or be unfaithful or whatever. A lot of times that can be because he is being unfaithful or thinking of being unfaithful or whatever. So that means he's projecting that attitude, he's projecting that view, emotional feelings and all that onto the other person. And that reveals a lot about you sometimes, because sometimes it reveals way more about you than it does about the person you're talking to or about. I do want to also address one other thing. Critical thinking is what Greg seems to be missing here. Critical thinking, just for anybody that's not aware, is when you can turn a critical eye onto your own beliefs and say, hey, maybe I'm wrong on this. Let me think this through. Let me analyze this. Let me look at what people who disagree with me say. What are their points? What are their arguments? And it's listening honestly, not just sitting there and thinking, how can you debunk everything someone says? It's about listening honestly to the evidence. That's what critical thinking is about. It's about being able to say, hey, I'm critical of even my own attitudes, beliefs, and conclusions. Let's see what else Greg has to say here.
The title to me is really important. I was having a conversation with a stockbroker once who was sitting next to me on an airplane. I fly a bit, and so I have these conversations. He asked me what I did for a living. And so I told him I'm a writer. I do radio, and he wanted to know what I write about and talk about, and I'm at a crossroads now because I want to tell him I write about religious topics, especially Christianity, and making the case for Christianity, but I don't want him to think about my view the way most people think about religion.
Does anyone else feel odd about the way that Greg feels the need to control how his conversation partner feels about what he has to say to him? For those that don't know, I used to be an evangelical Christian up until just a few years ago. Pretty hardcore. I even was raised in some groups that people consider cults commonly, so it was a very interesting upbringing. And then I became part of mainstream, I would call it like a Baptist theology. So I used to be this way as a Christian as well. I used to be concerned about what others thought of me and what I had to say. And a lot of this comes down to, you think, hey, I'm representing my God. I'm representing and need to represent it correctly and responsibly, right? You don't want to have someone go to hell or something because of something stupid you said. I mean, that's a huge burden to carry around with you. So I can understand wanting to control what people think because of that. But I found that usually if someone asks a question like this of you, it's almost always to just answer it straight out honestly. Just be real. In hindsight, why wasn't I realizing, hey, God's in control of this, so I just need to be honest? But no, manipulation is a very important part of proselytizing. Let's go ahead and move forward with what else Greg has to say. So far, I've not been too impressed, but maybe it'll get better.
The way most people think about religion is a kind of a religious fantasy club. And that's not my view. We're not just following something that makes us feel better. We're not choosing that. We are believing the Christian view of the reality, because the Christian worldview, because we think it is the accurate view of reality.
First, I completely disagree that most people think of religion as a fantasy club. Most people on earth are religious to some degree or another. There is literally nothing special or unique about this point of view. Do you not think that Muslims think their worldview is as accurate of a model of reality as yours is, Greg? It's like he is trying to make his beliefs somehow unique or special when they just really, really aren't. Religion is pretty much as ancient as humankind. Okay, let's see how Crockemeyer goes here. Getting some bad RNG here. Okay, that's a little better. All right, let's go ahead and listen to the rest of what Greg has to say here.
It's true in the sense that gravity is true. We're not talking about our Christian fantasy. We're talking about events that really took place and people who really lived, or events that are going to take place. So we're talking about history here. Now, of course, we need to defend that. And that's what apologetics are for.
Sure.
Okay. Now you've jumped to thinking that everything you believe is true to asserting it is actually true. As true as gravity. This is a major claim that many religions make, but I've never seen substantially backed up. Again, Muslims claim this, Latter-day Saints claim this, Seventh-day Adventists claim this, Jehovah's Witnesses claim this. If you're going to make such enormous claims, Greg, I hope you can back them up now, Greg. But let's see if he can.
Let's kind of back the tape up a little bit and talk about how you became a Christian. What was the details of that, and what was your mind like? You seem like a critical thinker.
No! Greg definitely does not seem like a critical thinker. And this also demonstrates that Jim has no idea what critical thinking even is. Here we go. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. I think we got it. Yeah, baby. There we go. Let's talk about this idea of sacred cows. I don't know if you guys know the term sacred cow or not. A sacred cow is an idea that you hold that you just believe cannot be untrue. Like you cannot be wrong about this one thing. Sacred cows can come in many forms, but they usually are religious or political in nature, usually. Let's see if I can jump up here since I didn't get the charge. There we go. For example, with a lot of my family now, they are hardcore Trump supporters. And it's amazing because it doesn't matter how many awful, evil things he does. It doesn't matter if he's trying to take over and steal elections. It doesn't matter if he gets people killed like he did on January 6th of 2021. He could shoot somebody right in front of them, and they would never waver in their devotion to Trump. It's amazing that the level of commitment, no matter what evil he commits, putting kids in cages, doing the whole 9 yards. And to me, that tells me that Trump is a sacred cow to them. Like, they cannot be wrong about that, no matter what. No matter what new evidence comes out, no matter what new information comes out. This is the opposite of critical thinking, because critical thinking is about always questioning yourself and saying, maybe I'm wrong on this. Let me look at new information as it comes out. It's nearly impossible almost impossible to critically think about sacred cows that are in your life. This is why sacred cows are just something you want to avoid altogether. There is no such thing as a sacred cow to you, because you recognize that that's an area you have basically just kind of taped off to saying this is not subject to critical thinking. This is not subject to criticism. This is not subject to reanalysis or analytically gaming it. Sorry, just had to do that. Now, there can be many reasons why people have sacred cows. It can be the fear of death. For example, so many people fear death because they don't know what's going to happen, if they have an afterlife or not. I don't really know all that. I don't claim to know any of that because, as far as I know, I just don't have enough information to judge it about an afterlife. But those that really want to have an afterlife and are scared of death will sometimes accept and hold on to a sacred cow because they're too fearful of what may be coming next. It can also be pride. Some of the stuff that's come out with Trump, for example, using that example of my family, treating him as a sacred cow, I think that with a lot of my family, it's too much of a pill to swallow for their pride to admit they were wrong after fighting so vehemently for Trump and on his behalf. Like, it's almost like they've taken on Trump as an identity for them or something. Pride is a big one because studies have shown that once you've verbalized a belief or a position you're taking, you tend to decide you're just not going to change your mind on that no matter what. Greg might be an excellent critical thinker in general. I don't know for sure. I can confidently say that Greg is not a critical thinker when it comes to his Christian beliefs, because he is having to use logical fallacies to justify them. If you have to use a logical fallacy, such as the straw man fallacy, it's a strong indication you may not have a justified belief. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong. It just means that you're not justified in believing that. That's it. All right. We are approaching the second major boss in the game. So we're going to go ahead and fight this boss before we move on to the rest of Greg's talk here. So, wish me luck. Here we go. Do a little bit of farming here so we can get a little bit of stuff here. Health and pickups, missiles. To anybody in the chat, can you tell me if my button clicking on the controller is too loud? Because I'm seeing it come up on the monitor and I don't know how loud or distracting it is. I would love it if someone could give me that feedback real quick so I know if my audio is okay. If it's distracting or whatever. Okay, thank you, Robin1957. I appreciate that. Well, great. I'm almost out of health. That's just fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and continue on with what Greg has to say here and see what's up.
So before you encountered the Lord, were you a skeptic, or what kind of person were you?
Well, I was raised in a Christian home, modestly Christian. I was raised in a Roman Catholic home, but for us, it really had no depth to it. And so when everybody grew up, all the 5 kids, we all left. And so do my parents, okay? And then I spent mid-60s a time of engaging the culture. And so for about 6 years, I embraced the ideas of the world.
Jim asked Greg if he was a skeptic before he came to know the Lord. First of all, I don't like the way this is phrased. I mean, I get where Jim's coming from. Being a skeptic is generally just being committed to making sure that your ideas are correct. That's basically what it is. To me, everyone should be aiming to be a skeptic. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your beliefs are. Everybody should strive to be a skeptic, in my opinion, because that just means, doesn't matter what you believe, it just means that you're striving to make sure that you critically think so that you make sure your beliefs match up with reality as much as possible. Okay, I'm about to die, so I need to farm for health here for a minute. Okay, I have a little bit more wiggle room now. Yeah, Greg said that he spent 6 years embracing the ideas of the world. What does that even mean? Who exactly represents the world? This seems enormously vague and comes off as a way of putting all people that don't think like him into one giant category, which is ridiculous. I'm almost to a health recharge station, so I'll be in better shape. Whew, that was a little rough. We're going to get this tricky missile right here. There we go. When you say the world, are you referring to the ideas of Islam, secular humanism, Judaism, atheism, Hinduism, conservatism, progressivism? I could go on and on with more isms, and it sounds like you are lumping all these ideas into one. That's just ludicrous, and frankly, it's deceptive. It's part of the fallacious reasoning he's using and this construction of straw man fallacies.
And then there's some dramatic things that happened in my life. One of them is my girlfriend of 5 years broke up with me, and that caused me to face the reality of my own worldviews, which are relativistic. I didn't believe in objective morality. I didn't believe in any ultimate meaning to life. But then I realized if that's the case, I'm all alone in the universe.
I'm really am sorry to hear about Greg being dumped by his girlfriend and all that. I'm sure that was a very unpleasant experience. I don't want to be insensitive to that. Based on how Greg is explaining this, it sounds like he was very emotionally dependent on his girlfriend for his emotional needs and to stave off loneliness. I agree that loneliness can be a terrible thing to suffer through. I get that. Greg also mentions about objective morality and the ultimate meaning of life. I'm not sure what these have to do with the self-reflection he had on his loneliness, so I'm not going to spend time on that here unless he elaborates a little more and gives me some context to work with here. Got the gravity suit. All right. This comment by Greg seems to be an admission that he chose to be a Christian in order to stave off loneliness, which would be a bad reason to hold beliefs that can dramatically affect your entire life to some degree or another. When he talks like this, it sounds like he's trying to sound like he has these good reasons for believing what he does, when in fact he probably was just indoctrinated as a child to the point that it felt so real to him. I know how that feels. And then, you logically in your head know you should have good reasons for the beliefs you do. But when you build up these sacred cows from a young age, very difficult to overcome that. Very difficult. We are going to recharge our life finally here, so I'm not constantly almost dying. While we recharge, let's go ahead and continue.
And so that created kind of an existential crisis for me. I didn't become a Christian immediately. But what it showed me is that the ideas that I was holding that sounded so cool at the time, so popular with the culture, were not anything that was going to sustain me through the real challenges of life.
And it sounds like your real challenges of life was fighting off loneliness. This is not a good reason to settle on beliefs that will dramatically affect all of the most important aspects of your life, Greg. All right, I need quiet for just a second. I need to hear this door open. There we go. There we go. All right, let's continue.
And during that time, my younger brother Mark had become a Christian through the Jesus movement, and we were both on the West Coast at this time. We were raised in the Midwest, but through different circumstances, we ended up in Los Angeles. And he just hammered away at me for months and months, and to be honest with me, got me thinking. And the Holy Spirit was working on me at that time. And to make a long story short, I just came to the realization that Christianity was true. I know it now. It was the Holy Spirit working powerfully in my life.
The Holy Spirit working in your life, it's such a cop-out for not having good reasons for your beliefs. It really is. Okay, watch this. The holy, sacred ham and cheese sandwich sent the spirit of sliced bread to me. See, I can do it too. The sliced bread spirit is now working in my life to make me a better and more obedient sandwichin. Let's open the door to Turian so we don't have to worry about that later. The whole sandwichin thing makes just as much sense as what Greg is saying here, and sounds like an excuse for believing in a sacred cow that has no other logical or evidentiary justification. It just doesn't.
Mm-hmm. And then on September 28th, 1973, that's when I gave my life to Christ. Mm-hmm. And I've been following him ever since. But the thing that made the big deal for me, the big difference, is understanding the grace of God, which I never understood before. Oh, I understood the law. I understood all the demands that were on me. But in the system I was raised in before, this was when you got to work your way through those laws and do as best you can and then hope that you're going to heaven.
This is part of why Greg's version of Christianity is so dangerous. It teaches grace, which is basically a total forgiveness from his God and all the sins he may be guilty of. Here we go. So you might say, hey, Jason, why is the concept of grace so dangerous? Well, a couple things here. First of all, it allows you to be exonerated for a bad deed against another person by simply being forgiven by a God. The sinner doesn't even need to make up for any sins to the person who is wronged or hurt. The idea that you can hurt or harm someone and then just be forgiven, poof, without having to make right your past harmful deeds is not helpful to us building a better society. It's a way of excusing away your bad deeds. And the other point about why this concept of grace is so dangerous, this idea of normalizing substitutionary atonement. Substitutionary atonement is this idea that the idea of Jesus is kind of based off of, where instead of you paying the price for a crime or a sin that you've committed, you instead have a scapegoat that takes that sin on so you can get away with it. It's basically a way of, it's punishing someone else for your sins, which is immoral on its face. You know, if I had 3 kids here and 2 of them were committing some awful deeds and hurting people, let's say, hurting other people, the idea that I could take the innocent child and punish them and it makes everything okay for those that did wrong, that's just ridiculous. Who would ever think that that is a moral way of doing things when you think about it for more than a couple seconds?
That is the good news. That's what's so exciting about the Christian
Absolutely.
faith, and that's what makes it a joy to share with other people.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk about that, all other religions are man trying to reach up to God.
Right.
Christianity's the only one where he's reaching down to us.
That's right. And see, that was news to me.
Right.
And that was really the good news.
Again, I see nothing good about grace, substitutionary atonement, etc. I'm not really sure how accurate Greg is in saying that Christianity is the only religion where God reaches down to us, seemingly granting more credibility. I just don't see how it makes any difference. Check this out. Sandwichism is the only religion where a God is delicious, therefore it must be true. This is a logical fallacy called the non sequitur. Well, basically all logical fallacies, I think, count as non sequiturs, really. Okay, I'm going to get this up here. Stop hitting me. All these missiles help later when we get to Mother Brain. Let's go ahead and continue.
I was just sharing with someone the other day who was in a similar circumstance. And I said, do you know whether you're going to heaven or not? And he said, no, maybe, maybe not. I said, is that good news? He said, no, that's not good news. I said, but the gospel is good news. So what you believe is not the gospel.
What? This whole line of thinking sounds like a great big nothing burger to me. Knowing whether you're going to heaven or not seems like an impossibility to me. Which heaven is real? Which hell? I mean, he's acting as if his version of Christianity is the only heaven or hell that's preached out there, and it's not. Islam's version of hell is far worse than what Christianity describes. So are we trying to gain the best heaven or avoid the worst hell? All right, this is a little bit tricky, but I'm going to try to get it. Okay, here we go. Come on now. Got it, got it, got it. All right. Greg also said that the gospel is good news. And then he told his person he was apparently talking to that what you believe is not the gospel. Well, duh. But the gospel literally just means good news. I don't think the gospel, as preached by most Christians, could be considered as good news because of the whole substitutionary atonement thing. It's just, in my mind, it's very immoral. The more that Greg talks about his anecdotal experiences, the more I suspect he was much more indoctrinated as a child than what he is letting on. I could be wrong, but man, I sure smell that odor, I tell you what.
Well, let's get into that because I think in the book you just raised some outstanding concepts here, and let's take a look at the pieces of the puzzle as you describe them in the book.
Come on now, you can get in there. Get into that tight space. There we go. That's what she said. Jim is referring to the concepts we are about to explore in Greg's book as outstanding. Outstanding. I'm eager to find out how outstanding these concepts are. Thank you for watching this first video of my 4-part series responding to Greg Koukl's take on the solidness of the Christian worldview. I love seeing what others have to say about the opinions I've expressed and welcome you to participate with me in the comments. Please also take a quick moment now to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Doing those simple things really help me out a lot. Stay tuned for part 2 of this video series, and until then, keep being analytical, avoid those logical fallacies, and become a more analytical gamer. Bye-bye for now.